All right, take it away, Jen.
All right, today is October 10th. This meeting is a check-in on design tasks for Backdrop CMS, design and usability tasks. To start, there are two things we would like to improve on backdropcms.org, or two major things. One of them is the Try Backdrop page. We have a meta list of updates, which is issue number 555 and the cms.org queue. And this one is to clean up the Try Backdrop page. So now that you can use the live demo from the homepage, there's a button there that says other ways to try. We ran into an issue during our training last week where we told everybody to go there to get to the Pantheon button. And because of the random sort order on that page, we're like, it's right here at the top. Oh, actually, it's not at the top for all of you. It's only at the top for some of you. So it would be good if we could figure out some way to fix that page so that it's a little bit more usable for everyone, or at least consistent. And I think the reason that we put it in a random sort order is because we didn't want to give any one way to try more priority than the others, but we didn't necessarily think through usability issues of trying to go to that page later, thinking you know where something was. Gregory had a bunch of suggestions there about how to make that better. If we could do some kind of a jump menu at the top or accordion so you could always see all of them. There are a bunch of ways that we can make that page a little more usable. So if anyone wants to work on any of those issues, number 555 contains a bunch of suggestions on how to improve that. We also want to improve the modules, themes, and layouts search experience, particularly now that people are starting to search the Backdrop CMS.org site for modules that they might need to update coming from Drupal. It would be great if we could get some more information on there about modules that maybe aren't needed anymore when you're coming from Drupal, or information to update instructions on how to use Backdrop if you used one of the previous modules. And so we have an issue for that. It's issue number 442. I have a local branch that I think has a new view mode, but the search functionality still needs some work. But if anyone wants to jump in on any of that, I think we could also use, we've got some better designs for those pages we could also use to have them implemented. So there's a bunch of improvements to the search for modules, themes, or layouts pages on backdropcms.org. We, of course, are all ears for other improvements to backdropcms.org, design, usability, or even functionality-wise. And if you want to check on those, you can check on the issue queue, which is backdropops.backdropcms.org.
Before we move on, I don't know why I didn't notice this before, but we don't have a global search in our homepage. And some people mentioned that this was brought up during BADCamp or elsewhere. I'm not sure if we even have a, an issue for it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone had ever asked for it before. I think part of the reason we didn't have a global search set up out of the box is because we modified the way global search worked to only return modules, themes, and layouts. But I don't know that we're actually using that anymore. I think those pages are now using views filters instead of views search. So we could definitely put it back, but we should test it first and make sure that any of our custom stuff that we've done to modify search isn't still going to affect it. We also had a request at BADCamp that the search box there also search the API site and the forum site, which is a little bit more complicated because now we're talking about cross-site searching. We might need something external like Solr to index all of that content at once. So I think there's two steps there. One of them is like, just get a basic search working. And then we have a follow-up, which is like, let's make this a more comprehensive search tool for people. But yeah, I don't know if there's issues for either of those, but we could definitely create them.
Yeah, if there's no, and if I remember, because I have quite a few tasks, I'll create a ticket just to start the discussion on it.
Okay, those are the main issues we wanted to highlight for backdropcms.org. There's obviously a bunch more in the queue. Any improvements are always welcome, but let's move on to talking about Backdrop CMS, the product itself. So we have a couple of outstanding usability issues. I think we talked about some of these in our last meeting. One of them is the drop-down menu behavior. So this is something that some people are finding confusing, especially the difference between how it works on desktop and on mobile. With drop-down menus in general, people tend to, when they're hover drop downs on desktop, people tend to hover and go all the way down to the bottom level, not clicking on the top level items. So I think there's been a long-standing request to duplicate the top items in the sub menu, even as like the first item, so that we can get people actually clicking on the most important pages rather than missing them and going to the bottom. And then we also have an issue where when this menu goes to mobile, the first time you click on a link, it opens the, I don't know what it's called.
It expands the, yeah.
Yeah. And then the second time you click on it, it goes to the page. And I think that's also sometimes confusing for people, where you wouldn't expect a different behavior when you click on the same link twice. And so if we were able to duplicate the top link in the child, that might also fix that problem. So we should, because we're using this Smart Menus JavaScript library, we should probably look upstream and see if there's any work going on this already. There might not be, but it's definitely a place where if we wanted to figure out how to duplicate menu items, we could do it on the Backdrop side and just duplicate them in the menu, or we could try and do it in the JavaScript library side where we wouldn't have to have duplicate entries in our menu, and maybe the JavaScript.
The other thing is that there's difference of expectation and behaviors, because there's the option where you have the plus button for expanding, and you can, but some people find that weird. So we may need to introduce like a couple of checkboxes with options on what the behavior could be, but yeah.
So this JavaScript library does have the ability to have different themes. And I don't know if any of this will qualify for a theme or if it should be a setting, but we could look at, for example, some of the other themes that come with a library out of the box and see if they change any of these behaviors. Because it could be as simple as giving them a select list for like, which theme do they want and having it work that way. We might have to add some like useful text so people know that changing a theme would change behavior too. But just thinking like this might already be compensated for in different themes. It might not be, it might just be design, but it could be someplace to look.
Yeah, I'd also second that it would be nice to have settings for it. Firstly, because when we change the behavior now, all sites could be changed. That is a danger. And also, I know this behavior on desktop, which you described, which some people want, but I find it annoying because you have to click. You have one click more to go somewhere. And for example, there are some platforms like Jira, and when I have to use it, I am so annoyed to have to click so often.
Yeah,
I think
some people already. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that it's also a so we're building tools for site builders, and it comes down to the end customer. So the end customer might be asking the site builder to do it that way, and another customer might ask them to do it another way. So it would be great if we provided an easy way for us to accommodate site builders so that they can accomplish what the task is being asked, like the task that is being asked by the customers, no matter what the customer's preference is. So if there was just a click instead of them having to code custom things, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think we'll need to look at what kind of solutions are out there. Like we could add extra clicks, but that could be really frustrating for people. But just like also adding like duplicating links places might not add extra clicks, at least in the desktop version, because we could still get there with hovers. But I don't know if that means we would be adding extra clicks on mobile. We'll just have to see what solutions are there. I'm sure we're not the only people that have run into this, and see what kind of options we have. And hopefully those options would come with settings so that we can leave existing sites alone. But I don't know how it's set up with this particular library. So
what's the library called?
Smart Menus.
Smart Menus, yeah.
Smart Menus.
So
it's popular responsive drop-down menu for use with Bootstrap. So I would imagine searching for like Bootstrap menu options might be a good way to find things people have done with it.
Yeah. When I've done the research, it was like, I don't remember when we introduced the drop-down menus. Was it 1.4? I think. Can't remember now. It was the only library that was also, it had keyboard navigation support. It had ARIA, sort of like compliance. So it was sort of like
the
A
winner.
bit ahead, yeah, a bit ahead of the rest of the flock. Yeah.
I agree. We need to keep those things, but we get to figure out the usability improvements too.
Jen, I missed. Where did you get that feedback from?
I don't remember. There's an issue. So there's an issue in the queue 2370. I know we talked about it there. I don't remember where all of the other feedback came from. It might have been the last time we had this meeting.
I thought it was. Thought it was at Badcamp.
I don't know if we talked about it at we could have. We talked about a lot of stuff. I don't remember specifically.
Yeah. Did you by chance, you or Greg or some other person, think about or got feedback about another menu option for an off-canvas version? Because we have now, when we go to mobile, we have this classical one which goes down. And there are also a lot of websites for a time now where you have instead of canvas menu, which comes from the site.
Yeah.
And
I think that could also be a setting too, where you could decide whether you wanted to like move your content, overlay your content, and then when you say, like, you could figure out which direction you want it to come from, like slide in left, slide down top, or however. I've implemented an off-screen version of this once with CSS. It was pretty hard. So I think if we can do that with a setting, that might be a big win for me.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah.
So Smart Menus supports for some fancy things, but I don't remember if it supports that. And
I do remember. So.
Yeah, I remember that it implemented quite a few things that we did not take advantage of.
Yeah.
It was.
We also have when we first put in the menu system, we had this other issue that was like maybe make it an API so that we don't always have to use the same menu, and we haven't implemented that second part of it, but we might be hitting on some good use cases here for like if we get to a limitation of what this menu can do, we could revisit that issue and say, well, maybe we need to swap it out with something else. I would love to do some investigating on this menu first because it was the best at the time we put it in. It might not still be that way. Things change fast. But it would be good to see like how much improvement we can do or how many new features we can add to the one that we have. And some of this could be a contrib module too, right? If we ended up with like an advanced menu settings contrib module that would allow you to do like off screen or duplicate link or something like that. And I think all of that's still possible with, we don't need to swap out the menu API. We can just use what we already have. But.
So yeah, if it was an API, we could have a contrib module that does that offsite thing if Smart Menus doesn't support it.
Yeah. Or we could even add like our own JavaScript in the contrib menu that would add the support to Smart Menus. I'm sure it exists out there somewhere already.
Yeah.
All right. Other things that we should talk about for usability on Backdrop, the product. One of them is this long outstanding promoted modules on installer issue. Every time I think about this, I kind of wonder where it is that we get stuck. I wonder if it might be good to do a update to the parent issue, just so that every time we go to revisit it, we'll know like, okay, these are the steps we need to do, and this is where we're stuck right now. Because there are a lot of moving pieces to that. We have like the project module, the backdropcms.org delivery of the file, and then the Backdrop project itself ingesting it correctly.
So I think that the bit that we are stuck is so we have a checkbox for promoted on b.org, but that is not included in the JSON or whatever XML file is being output, which is what is consumed by the sites. So if we get that sorted, we're just like really close after that.
Can we put that as like a checkbox on as a list in the top issue there, like to do, and like so that it's clear. I think if we can remove the process of needing to think about it every time we come back to this issue, it might get done a little faster.
Yep, I'll do that.
Okay. And then
Also another thing that is blocker for the UX issues in the product, but as well other things that are linked to missing pieces in b.org is that we don't have updated databases, sanitized databases. So maybe if someone can ping Justin when he
are
has
they
some time to, yeah,
not getting automatically?
yeah.
Okay.
So the cron jobs might have not been migrated.
Yeah.
All right.
I think they were, but they might not have been started or set up correctly.
Yeah.
Because I remember Justin talking about using Jeff's script for that.
Yeah.
But I don't. We should check on them and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Is there an issue for that in particular on the backdropcms.org queue?
I think yes, and we did mention it to Justin this week sometime, I think, or maybe it was the last week when you guys were at the bad camp, and he said he just doesn't have enough time, but he hopes to just allocate some time to take a look.
Another thing too is if maybe like he could document how it's set up. Like we have other people who have access to the server, they just don't know what to check for. So maybe we just need like a README file on there or something that's like, these are the cron jobs that are supposed to be running. And then that way anyone could log in and work on it. But right now, because he set it up and he's the only one who knows how it works, we're sort of stuck.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We can talk about that in that issue. But maybe the next time we get his attention, be like, okay, you don't have time to do it. Can you just write down what to do? Or tell one of us and we'll write down what to do. Okay.
I have a small UX issue. It's just there's an issue for it. There's been a little discussion. I just think we just need a little more feedback. The row width behavior text for flexible layouts,
Okay.
I found to be very confusing. I've done a pull. I just posted the link in Gitter. I posted a pull request with some alternative text, but it's really just a draft. I'd love feedback on it. So I don't know if we need to talk about it right now. I'd just like to.
This is 4081.
Yeah.
It's on my list. I wanted to take a look at that.
Okay. And is this a duplicate of the other issue, or is this the child issue? This looks like it might be the child one. So we had like all the follow-ups that were necessary for, I lost you guys in my Zoom window. There we go. For the flexible templates. And one of them was like figure out better labels for whatever, but I'm not sure that we had an issue for it. So maybe we can just link this to that one.
Well, yeah, there's a flexible layout follow-ups issue, meta issue, and then you created an issue, Jen, over the weekend, text cleanup for flexible layouts. That's 4118, and I've already linked to that.
Okay, it was from the original one. It might have even not even been in follow-up. It might have just been on the parent issue. But I remember we ran into the very beginning and everybody's like, what are these things? And we were like, we'll deal with it later. So now it's later. But yeah, that issue I probably closed. So
well, there is, yeah. Okay. And there is the meta issue. So if you know of other open issues, make sure they're on there. I've been trying to keep that up to date. 4046.
Thank you.
So I started on a couple of working on a couple of UX issues as well, which I like feedback on. But then I posted some links. I have one ready. So one that I'm interested right now is 3975, and it has to do with the installer and how we present the options for people to select additional languages. So there's a lot of tiny annoyances there, like clicking and links and then reloading separate pages only to take you back to the other page, things that could have been in a single page, consolidated. Yeah, so I've filed a pull request, and there's some feedback from Olaf there, but I would like some other people to chime in and see what they think.
Okay. Can you say that issue number one more time?
It was 3975.
3975. Okay. Yeah, I remember running into that. Like you created that issue or something similar, at least talked about it right after installer module went in. And I was like, oh yeah, that looks like a good idea. And then put it to the back of my mind. And then at one point I demoed it. I don't remember if it was in a training or I was just showing to someone and I'm like, this is terrible. And then I went and found your issue and I'm like, of course, Gregory's already reported all of these things. But yeah, it's like this amazing feature that you don't notice there's a problem with it until you have to explain it to someone, and then you're like, oh yeah, I guess that's a little weird. These buttons say the wrong things, and they take you to the, like, in a strange order, and yeah. But
yeah, and the pull request for it was really like consolidating things, reduced the code and the logic that we required just to go from one page to another, and it was just chuck it in a field set and that's it. Because the second page was not doing anything, actually, was just providing information on what to do with translation files.
okay.
I started working on it today afresh, and one comment that I have to, this is related to the next meeting, the dev meeting. Maybe we accidentally rewrote the change that fixed the PL files, the detection, because again, I had to sort of like manually apply the fixed single line of the regex. And since we're on it, the last iteration of things that I was fixing on that issue, the 3975, was that it always annoys me when we have drop-down options. And because I'm a person of OCD, like I keep clicking on all the available options I have in every like element in a form. And when there's only one option, it annoys me to just click the drop down to find out that it's a single option. So I have an issue filed for that, an old one, yeah, 1442, suggesting that if there's only one available option in the drop down, it shouldn't be rendered as a drop down. Maybe, I don't know. But specifically for the installer, I thought that the most common use case is to add another language or another couple of languages. So instead of having a drop down there, maybe we could have a series of checkboxes, radio buttons, unless the list becomes bigger than, like, randomly chose a number 3 there. But yeah, I don't think that people will be installing like 5 or 10 languages. The most common use case would be just a couple of languages during the installer. So yeah, anyway, these are things that I would like feedback with, and then I can update the pull request. And then Olaf also gets annoyed by the fact that, and I understand that it has been brought up another time. So we currently have the field sets have capitalized letters on their labels. And this was also brought up in the issue that we recently fixed with the available, what you call it, filters for body text. And we just specifically for these field sets, we made it lowercase. But yeah, so more cases of these are coming out. It's just, it emphasizes things that shouldn't be emphasized in specific pages. So I'm not sure if we should file an issue against the 7 admin theme to just make it lowercase in general for the entire 7 theme, or if we would treat it on a case-by-case scenario thing.
Yeah, I feel like we maybe should do it the other way, where by default they're all lowercase, and then case by case, if it was important enough, we would make it uppercase. Because I feel like it, and I don't know if this is only done in 7, we should make sure we're not doing it in core also. But it could be really confusing for people if we're highlighting things that shouldn't be highlighted, where I think that we're going to know in the admin interface when something does need more emphasis, we can update that pretty easily. So I know that was a design direction decision because most field sets are important, but in an admin UI where we have so much going on and we use field sets a lot, I think making an assumption that all of them are important is not good, as you've started to notice with, you know, the examples where we've already compensated in the other direction. But yeah, I would recommend creating an issue against 7, and then I think like changing it in the pull request and having a whole bunch of people look at it and see if there's anywhere we think we need to go the other way and make them all capital.
Yeah. So there's another one final issue that I want to bring up with UX. I'm trying to find the pull request for it because it's a tiny pull request and it fixes it. It's at some point labels of fields that are within field sets, expanded ones, are being overwritten, and they are meant to be bold, but they are not. I'm trying to find the issue for it now. And there's another older related issue where fields that are dependent on other fields should be nested, like they should have some padding on the left or the right, and they don't, because it gets confusing to have that like whole, yeah, especially in forms that have a lot of elements. Just quickly, let me just find this. Yeah, so the ticket number should be 1828.
Or indented?
No, that's not for the intended. That's for the font weight. That's for the font weight. Yeah.
Okay.
And we do have a pull request for that. It's already marked as works for me from team. So we just need a code review.
Okay. This is great.
Yeah, so these are tiny things that have a sort of like a global effect on the admin UI. And yeah, as soon as we get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Gregory, is there an issue for that all uppercase field sets title one?
No, it has been brought a couple of times on other issues, but there's no dedicated issue for it. So I'll create one.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be great. When you said that, and I've experienced this a couple of times, looking at our all uppercase field set titles and thinking like, if it was causing a problem for usability or accessibility, readability, there's all kinds of things. So yeah, doing a quick search, it doesn't take a whole lot of investigation to find out that that's kind of a bad idea, like all uppercase letters.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's fortunately already a lot of great aggregation of like people that have had the same question and then the same kind of results. It's not overwhelming, you know, like I think if you had a good design case for it in limited circumstances, it might kind of be okay, but it's generally not good.
I think that it was even bolded in the Drupal 7 version of it. I'm not sure, I can't recall properly, but the original design or redesign of 7 was done in the early days, like of 1.1 maybe. So maybe we didn't think of that back then, but yeah, it's coming up. So it's small issues like small sort of like things like that, like the issue that I mentioned before, 1828, the pull request is literally like 2 lines of code being removed actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
So I'm actually currently looking at this 7 theme, and there's really a lot of uppercase in it.
There really is.
A lot of this we inherited from 7 too. This is not our fault.
Yeah,
I agree.
So maybe if you make the issue, Greg, maybe you could formulate it more general, and then we look for principles or for sections where it makes sense to remove it and where not.
Yeah.
As in not limited in field sets, you mean, but generally look into the case of where uppercase should be good. Yeah.
That trips me up a lot. Like I think there's just a lot of places where we could reevaluate. So maybe like specifically put in there some bullets, like we know we need to look at field sets, but just more generally, like if we're in the code, we can look for a text transform uppercase and be like, what's that doing there?
Okay. And then a final, I haven't filed an issue for it, I think. A final goal maybe for 1.15 is to provide a dark version of the 7 admin theme. Because there's a lot of, like there's a trend for everybody to just, especially the people that are environmentally cautious or, it's battery consuming for people working on mobile as well. So yeah, or plain, some people just find
Contrib.
Sorry?
Can we start that in Contrib?
Yeah,
like
as a sub thing.
7 dark or something, darker, 7 p.m. I don't know.
7 p.m. That's good.
Yeah, it's totally, you're right, it's totally in vogue right now, but it's also funny that it's still super subjective and it's almost never the default still. Because I think that the initial impression is that people still prefer the lighter, the majority of people still really prefer the white appearance.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a very vocal, smaller group that really likes dark modes. And so it's like developer appeasing basically across the board that's happening with dark modes. Although maybe I think the proliferation might be increasing popularity slightly too. But yeah.
The thing,
I think it would be good to have it though. I just don't know that we're ready to put it in core yet.
yeah, the reason why I said in core is that it might not even be a separate theme. We can add color support for it. And it would be just a color template, the same that we have color templates for Batik. So people can just go and switch to dark mode and that's it.
Yeah, it would require some work to do that because right now our color schemes are like changing where there are already colors rather than like where it's blue, then you could change it to green, but we don't have any accommodation for, I mean, we could, for flipping everything, like where it's white or dark and where it's
Or there's nothing, add something. We don't have that yet.
Yeah, but that basically just means that you'd have to have the ability to change almost every color on the entire page because you need to be able to change font colors, like the actual text on the page, the heading colors, the background colors. I mean, it'd be like everything, which means you could make an entire site where everything was red and you would just get a big red page or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
It's just at the back of my head, and it's like we did a really good job with bases and the variations, like the colors. And then the last thing that comes to mind is the background of the logo and slogan thing, which is something that Tim is bringing up often. So
Yeah.
Tim, want to elaborate on that and bring up the ticket number? You're muted.
Sorry, you're talking about the block behind the header, or the site title? Yeah. Okay. It's in the agenda, and there's a ticket number there.
All right. It's under design.
It's under the design section. I just have the ticket number, and I guess so. I was kind of phasing out. I didn't hear exactly, Gregory, what you were leading into this with, but I'll just say, for me, I mean, Nate's given me a little bit of feedback here. My big question is what we can do in a minor release in terms of like CSS and basis. Like this is something I might. So how what we're talking about now relates to what we were just talking about? I have no idea because I didn't hear.
No, it's just step one is to add it to the agenda so that it can be brought up, because we obviously, like, we added half a dozen of issues now, and we obviously won't tackle them as soon as we can, but as long as they're in the agenda, they will be brought up. And since this is a design issue, I just recalled it and mentioned that we should add it to the agenda. But yeah, thanks.
Well, this title background has been on the agenda the last couple of weeks. So,
sorry, I didn't notice it.
Well, it didn't actually have an issue. So okay. I just created the issue recently. I think over the weekend I did at the sprint, and then there's been a little discussion about it. So
the discussion evolved around the fact that when you're looking at the desktop version, it doesn't make sense to have a different color, but we make good use of it on mobile, where we need the distinction from the header.
I mean, I think there's sort of some ideas about how to solve this. The problem is, can we solve it? And they sort of implied that we could. I'm just like, to me, it's really unclear what we could do to change the CSS in basis when that could affect existing live sites. And I'd like to get some feedback on that. The same thing, like there's another issue after this. The white
I have two ideas. One of them is we can use a theme setting. I don't think we have very many theme settings in Basis right now, but we could add one that would be something like header, logo, background, color, style, or something. Better name than that. And we could provide options that are like always provide a background color, never provide a background color, or provide a background color only on mobile. And based on whether one of those three are selected, we could add a class in pre-process to either the header region or the global page variable, like a body wrapper or whatever. And then we could have the CSS in existing style sheets that would change the behavior based on whether that class was there or not. So leave the default as it is now, but then if there's an additional class that says like no style, it could remove it. Or I don't know, you could start with nothing.
Well,
and if a new class is there, add it, and then add that class by default.
But it's worth mentioning that there's existing color setting for the header,
right,
for the name, and for the slogan.
Yeah.
It's just that, it's just that the background for the site name is separately styled now.
You can already use the color module to change that color to
Yes.
have it match.
Yeah.
I mean, my issue is that it's like, I have a hard time imagining that anybody would want to keep that color the way it is on desktop. And so my issue is just,
Yeah.
can we change the default? But that's, I understand that might not be possible.
Yeah, you can. So I just gave you 2 ways to do it. A third way would be to, based on this theme setting value, add a new style sheet. And so that style sheet wouldn't even be loaded for anyone that already has the site. But then when they have a new one, the new one could be added. So you can either do it with the classes where you add a new class and anyone running the current site doesn't get the class, but if you change the setting, it gets added. Or you could do it without entirely new style sheet gets added. And I don't know how much code is going to be in that style sheet. If it's just like 15 lines or something, it might not be worth having an entirely new one. But I think having a new code block that has that class in it, or 2 classes or whatever we end up defining, would be a good
Well,
thing.
there might be multiple issues that have the same problem, right? So if we, maybe the thing to do would be to try to bunch them together if we're going to add a new style sheet so that we're addressing more than one issue.
Well, if the style sheet only gets added with the one setting, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see what the code looks like, but I can't imagine it being more than like background color. If there's this line, don't let a background color. If this one is, and then it would either have media queries that would allow it to do it on mobile or not on mobile or not. But it still shouldn't. I don't think we'll be facing any. I mean, I don't know because I haven't seen the code, but I don't think there'll be anything else with like positioning with. I don't know what's on there now. So we'll have to see what your code comes up with. But like in my mind, I imagine it's 1 line, but in reality, it could be more like 15. But I still think that's not enough to devote an entirely new style sheet to. I think if we have other issues that we should solve them in other, like if we need other theme settings, we could do that too. But I don't know that would make sense in this style sheet. It would need to be in its own other style sheet or in its own other section in another style sheet. But yeah, we'll see what you run into when we try it, because I can't tell.
I think what I was getting at was that if there were multiple issues that involve changing defaults, but we don't necessarily need like a setting, is there a way to do that in an additional style sheet so that we would add one that only gets used for like new sites or something, and that it just sort of makes this change, and then we could bundle a number of issues together where we could actually make.
So we have like a hidden setting that's like, this is a new site. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I thought that's the direction you were going, and I don't know if it's a good idea.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like,
I'm just thinking there might be a handful of issues, and we don't want to create a whole bunch of new settings, right? I don't want to have.
Yeah.
Because most of these things I don't think are things that people are going to want or need, mostly need to choose, right?
Well, so the only thing I can think of with this one in particular is that like I installed the site last month, but I don't want my heading background color there. But now if that setting is hidden, how do I get the new feature?
So one easy way maybe to solve this is that if we add a link from see how they configure the block, we just add a link to the color, the theme, the basis settings page, and they can change it from there.
So that would be assuming we provided a basis setting. We're talking about not providing.
No, I'm talking about the basis. Basis already has a setting for the background of the header.
Oh, you mean the color module integration?
The color, yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about like disable color module. Basis already provides a background color for that image you probably don't want. So now how do you turn it off?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got like 3 things going on that are hard. Like number 1, we need to do this in a backwards compatible way. Number 2, we need to do it in a way that works with color module. And number 3, probably everyone wants it anyway. So do we really need a setting at all? Yeah, I think, Tim, if we want to go with a hidden setting, we can do that. But I think maybe it should be somewhere we can point people at, like, here's the JSON file that contains the thing that says true, and go change it to false. And even if that documentation lives somewhere like on the API site, we might be able to put something in like theme settings for Basis that's like, if you installed your site before January 1st, 2020, go check here if you want to disable this thing. But yeah, it is a good question as to whether we need that in the user interface or not.
This has been helpful. I really wasn't even sure where to start with how to solve this, and now we have a couple ideas. So I think we should. I need to just think about it a little.
Yeah, or we could just try it and see if you like it or not.
Right.
By the way, while testing the color module in Basis, I see that we have a what do you call it? A problem with the Plum version of the color set, where the menu is not like it's on a black. The top level menu thing is black on purple, and it's like not visible. Like, what do you call it? The area thing is not, the contrast is not good. Yeah.
Go ahead and create an issue for that. I ran across a couple of those too, and they're usually pretty easy to adjust.
Yeah, the rest of the color schemes, like color sets, actually are fine. The contrast is fine from what I can see. It's just this one. But yeah, okay, I'll file an issue for it.
Right. So one more thing before we move back into design issues, we have one thing left on our usability thing, and that was creating a theme function for the combination of both human and machine names for things. This is one that I think, Gregory, you brought up initially, and then I ran into it immediately after you brought it up when I was working on the file entity listing. And I was like, oh, geez, I wish I had that function that doesn't exist yet. And we do have a whole bunch of places that do it inconsistently across core. So I think if we can get this function in here, then all of a sudden we'll be able to make our user interfaces more consistent. Be good. That issue is number 3402. I suspect it's probably a good first issue, but I have like a feeling that creating the theme function might be easy, but trying to find all of the places where we're doing it wrong and updating it might be hard. So I'm not really sure how that's going to go. And then more design issues. Somebody pointed out, I think this might have been you, Tim, that when you try and put 2 hero blocks on the same page in Basis, you get a little white gap between them. I ran into that the first time I tried to do a Basis subtheme too, where I was like, oh, there's a weird gap underneath the hero block. And I would love to see that fixed in core, but again, in a way that's backwards compatible. So if we can find, if we can move that from one place to another, I don't know if you've looked into that or not yet, but issue number 4095, I think would be a good improvement. And then SVG support in core. This is something that we've talked about a bunch of times. I think is really important for keeping Backdrop as a modern CMS. We need to figure out some way to do SVG support. There are a couple contrib modules for Drupal 7. There's an issue to do SVG support in core for Drupal 8. I don't know if WordPress does this yet or not, but I think that it's important for us to figure out how to do it so that our image style thing doesn't fire for SVGs. It just prints the image at the right style, the right size. Yeah, that will need a little tweaking to figure out.
Yeah, this has been coming up so often lately. Like there's a lot of media or design teams that provide the SVGs for their designs, and people try to upload them, and it's like, yeah, it's embarrassing a bit. So there's a sibling issue to that, I think, that I filed, but I don't see it linked, and that has to do with animated GIF files. So long that no style is applied on them, they don't lose their animation. But if you try to manipulate the image, it's converted to a static one. I'm not sure if we can easily solve that, but at least we can warn people about it. So
that's a limitation of the GD image library that's on your server. And I think that like I've started switching to using ImageMagick because then you can resize animated GIFs and they retain that. It also, ImageMagick produces better compression, so you get smaller file size, which makes Google happier about your image assets. But I think that GD does have some updates that they're working on. I don't know how much of this they're catching up on. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how much we can test for and alert people about on our end, where we can say, hey, this image is in a field that might have image styles on it. Any animations will be lost or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I also don't know if we can test the image that gets uploaded to see if the original had animations on it. So I'm not sure I'd want people to see that message every time they upload any image, because they'll start to ignore it. And when they have one that needs the message, they won't read it. But yeah, so we can find a combination of like, does this image have animation on it? And could it be displayed in a way that you'd break the animations by using an image style? And that's also sometimes tricky to figure out at the field level, because on the content type, you might not have it, but maybe somewhere on a view, you do have it. So yeah.
Yeah, we could detect the GIF extension and just add it only there, right? And I think there's also animated PNG files, but they have a different extension. They are a PNG or something like that.
Okay.
So we can do a very simple file extension. It's not going to be very accurate, but at least it's going to be a warning only on those cases.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
And I just realized that I just looked for animated and I can't see any issue for it. Maybe I intended to create one and I never did.
I know I had created an issue about that for Drupal 7, but I'm not sure if I did it for Backdrop.
Yeah, there's nothing for Backdrop.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe. Yeah, okay, cool.
That was it. And then Gregory, I don't know if you want to create an issue for the dark mode for 7 thing, but I put it in the agenda so we can talk about it 2 weeks from now if you want to revisit the idea.
Yeah, I'll probably do that.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to talk about design or usability related? Good, because we're out of time. Our weekly meeting starts right now. So we should go ahead and wrap up the design meeting and switch gears.
Okay, cool.
All right, thanks guys for coming.
All right, thank you.
We have to end the meeting, like end the Zoom and reopen it, or?
Well, we have to end the live part.
Do I have to leave or should I just stay here? That's what I'm asking.
No, the recording needs to stop as well so that we can have a separate thing. Yeah.
All right, so stopping the recording. We're saying bye to people on the internet, but you can stay here. Bye.
Yep.